So what we have is we have 6 talks, and we are going to take a few selected events from the life of Sri Krishna and try to extract the symbolism from those events. In all of us, there is a seed, a potency, or a possibility to reach a level of consciousness which we call as Krishna. And that seed should be watered, and it requires the water of attention, and it is with the flowering of that seed and the growth of that seed into a possibility and an actuality that we flower, we rise on the what you call ladder of consciousness. So we've just taken a few events from his life, and we are going to just look at the hidden symbols in that and how it helps us on our inner journey to rise in consciousness. So I've divided the 6 days into different events. So today and tomorrow we'll talk about his birth and childhood. Monday and Tuesday we'll talk about the relationship between Radha and Krishna. Wednesday we'll take the death of Kamsa, and Thursday, the last day, we'll take the death of Krishna. Right? So we'll look at it in this way. So when we study his life, right, many aspects come out of that, and those aspects remain as a seed within us, a possibility for fulfillment. So we are going to talk of the child born in a jail and his playful childhood in Gokul and Vrindavan. His life is the peak, or we can call it the epitome of what we call knowledge or Tattva Gyan. The Tattva Gyan is the knowledge of the unfolding of consciousness. And it has a relationship with the higher aspects of our life, the symbolism in the higher aspects of our life. So the higher knowledge which has been conveyed by him, of course when we study the Bhagavad Gita and all, that is his words, but what we are going to study now is the symbolism in his life and the actions in his life which reveal this esoteric symbolism. And what we talk about must affect our being. It must help us in our journey to rise in consciousness. Otherwise, it will just remain as information or knowledge, something which we've just heard and we've not put into practice or not used. You see many peaks in his life, the epitome of bravery, not blind bravery, but bravery with knowledge, the transformation of emotional energy in relationships, right? There are 2 kinds of emotional energy. The lower is what we call as affection, and the higher is what we call as love. And when man is born, he is given affection as a raw material. And it is through his practice, through rising in consciousness, that he transforms affection into love. So affection increases and decreases, right? I may have a son, if he passes his exam, the affection increases. If he fails in the exam, the affection decreases. Right? So affection is what in Gujarati we call as lagri, right? But love is bhav, right? That never changes. So man is born with the raw material of affection, and he has to transform it into a higher form of love, which is bhav. And bhav does not attach itself anywhere. Affection always gets attached. It is a victim of attachment. So लागणी लागी जाए, but bhav, it is a presence. It is just the presence of love, the light of love which falls on anyone. So when we are talking about his life, he passes through so many relationships, but it is relationship with intense love, but free of attachment, right? And that is something which we learn from his what you call movement in relationship. His life depicts the peak of Shringar. Now there are 9 rasas, and the highest of the 9 rasas is what is called a Shrungar ras, and we'll go deep into Shrungar ras when we talk about Radha Krishna. And it being the highest of the 9 rasas, but for the moment we will just say, how do we decorate the present moment, right? So the present moment comes in through the 5 senses as an impression, and how we can improve upon that impression, right? How we can make it more rich. That is what we will, at present we will take Shrungar to decorate the present moment. So his life depicts the highest of Shrungar, deepest friendship, and we see that friendship in the Mahabharata, where he allowed Bhim's son Ghatotkach to die so that he could save his friend Arjun. So we see that in the Mahabharata. So he, in the Krishna Leela, there is the enacting of the deepest friendship. Craftiness in relationship, that he was not only very crafty, very intelligent, very cunning on what path the present moment should take, right? How to bring right action into the present moment, and that craftiness he had. But whatever he did for a higher state of consciousness, and whenever we do something for a higher state of consciousness, we say it is Sat, and when we do something which takes us to a lower state of consciousness, we call it as Asat. So everything done for Sat is called the path of Dharma. So whatever he did was for the higher state of consciousness, the path of Dharma. There are 2 things, friendship and friendliness. In friendship, I am attached to somebody. He is my friend. In friendliness, I live in the state of friendship. Whoever comes in front of me is my friend, right? It is a kind of inner light, and the light falls on whoever comes in front, and we, live the, relationship of friendship. Now, in the Hindu pathway, we have 2 avatars which we study very frequently, and one is Rama and the other is Krishna. So we just have a small comparison over here, that the 2 Vaishnava gods, Ram and Krishna, both are called Purushottam. Purush is the one who is living in the city of the body-brain system, right? The one who occupies the city of the body-brain system. And Uttam, the one who is occupying the city of the body-brain system, has become Uttam. He has risen to the highest state of consciousness. So we have 2 examples here, Krishna and Ram. Both took birth to show the path for the pathway to higher consciousness. And both are a level of consciousness with which we can achieve and we can rise to, which remain a potentiality in all of us. We will talk about Krishna the man, the young child born in jail, and also the Krishna the God, and that God which is sitting in all of us, and for which we make an effort to realize that God and to merge our being into that God. Now, Ram is called as Maryada Purushottam. That is, Ram, the word means Ramayate iti Ramam, the one who has come to play. And the one who has come to play in life, but he does not break any norms of society. He does not break any conditioning of society. He follows exactly what his father said, right? And he lives in a certain middle path of modesty. And within the norms of society, within the norms of morality and people's mind, to reach to that higher state of consciousness where you play the game of life and still are not attached to it, that is Ram. In Krishna, he broke all the taboos of society. I mean, there was no fixed religion, no fixed pathway. Every moment could be different. If he had promised you something in this moment, the next moment, if dharma needed, he would have broken the promise. If dharma needed something had to be lied for, he would lie for it, right? So there was no conditioning on Krishna. There was no fixed pathway on which he played the game of life. Every moment, the intelligence, what his intelligence told him was the right pathway, and that was his dharma. So he did not follow any norms of society or religion. In a way, we can say he was a revolutionary of his time. He did not follow any do's or don'ts. We cannot imagine Ram dancing in the moonlight, what do you call, with the gopis, nor can we imagine Ram sitting and playing the flute, right? So he was a very revolutionary form of Purushottam for his time and even for now. So we'll start our story with Krishna's birth. Krishna's birth was in Mathura, and the king of Mathura was Kamsa. And we'll go into this word Kamsa. It's very difficult to go into, find the real meaning of the word. There are multiple meanings, but he lived in the fear that somebody was going to kill him. And he knew this from the beginning because he had been cursed that somebody from his own family will kill him. And because of this, he had put his father, who was Ugrasena, into jail. Now, we can take one meaning to command, to destroy. Also, we can take the word kam means softness, desire, right? But it also means a vessel made out of bronze, what we in Gujarati we call kansu. It is made out of bronze. So, if we take the, what do you call, the symbolic projection of the vessel, so it would mean one who is drunk with himself, one who wants more and more. The vessel is never full. He is always wanting more and more. We can also go into the word in the state that one, because of fear of death, one who lives in fear of death, and that is why he is always trembling. And in, we can say the word which comes out of that is kampan, from Kamsa, je har shane andarthi kampto hoy છે. some things are difficult, but he's trembling all the time, restless all the time. So, if we take the Sanskrit language, uh, we take the what you call the Greek language, the first word is alpha and the last word is omega. And so the whole journey of man is from alpha to omega, right? And similarly, if we take the Sanskrit language, the first word is ka and the last word is ha. So ha means Hansa, the spirit or the Atma. So there is a movement from ka to ha, if you want to, right? Oh, very nice, very nice, right? So ka is, so this is our inner movement. At our lower level, the ego is a dominating ego filled with animal, what you call desires, right? Wants to dominate other people. The ego always wants to be right, and it could have animal passions. It could be a violent form of an ego, and that is Kamsa, the lower ka, and it moves into what the Atma is always depicted, the what you call the spirit is depicted as a swan, and the swan which it floats above the water. They say it doesn't go in the water does not touch the swan. And so the swan has risen above the waters of life and he's gliding through life. And so this is our inner journey of spirituality from Kamsa to Hansa, right? We start with Mathura, and he is the king of Mathura. And Mathura has come, the old name for Mathura was Madhura. Madhura means that which is tasting sweet, which is tasting sweet. And the city was established by a Rakshas or a demon, and his name was Madhu Rakshas, and that is why it was called as Madhura. Madhu means honey. So this is the story of our life, Madhura, that we are always seeking comfort in life, always seeking pleasure in life, always seeking honey in life. And wherever there is suffering, wherever there are obstacles, we are always running away from it. And this is our inner psychological state where the ego is always seeking a pleasure seeking, and that is our inner state of Madhura. Out of this seeking of pleasure, there is the attraction and repulsion. Somewhere we are attracted, somewhere we are repulsed. What is called as raga and dvesh come out of it. So in all of us, there at the lowest form of the ego, where we start our spiritual journey, where we are totally overridden by animal tendencies, and that is the Kamsa within all of us. And many times when we get angry, many times when we get negative, this Kamsa, which is hidden in us, he comes out and we see it. So we saw that the search for pleasure is Madhura, and Madhu means honey, means it gives us a pleasant sensation, gives us a pleasant sensation. So one of the names of Krishna is Madhusudan, not that he killed the Rakshas Madhu, but he rose above Rag and Dvesh, and that is why he is called as Madhusudan. And we will see later on what you call Wednesday that Krishna killed Kamsa. He got the kingdom of Mathura, but he did not keep it for himself. He gave it back to Kamsa's father, Ugrasen, and that shows that he was free of possessiveness. He did not want to own anything, even though he could have been the king himself. Now, this search for Madhu, we always want more in life. And we have to ask ourselves a question. Do we want more because of excitement, or do we want more because of sensitivity? If I'm hungry, I want more because of sensitivity, right? But if I have seen all the serials and I'm looking for a new serial to see, then I want more out of excitement, right? So it is a question which every seeker has to ask himself: do I want more out of excitement, or do I want more out of sensitivity, right? I want more money. Do I want it more out of need, or do I want it more out of greed and possessiveness? Why do I want more? Why do I want more? So Madhura was that, where I wanted more for indulgence, more for greed, right? More because something has attracted me and hypnotized me. More because somebody else has more, I need to have more than him. More out of jealousy, more out of comparison, right? So every seeker should ask himself this question: why do I want more, right? My stomach is full, but now I want more out of taste. I want more out of indulgence, right? So this wanting of more is Madhura, this wanting of more. Now, to achieve more in life, we use cunningness, we use deceit, we use our intelligence in different forms, right? So Madhura was churned, એનું મંથન થયું, મધુરાનું મંથન થયું, it was churned, right? This churning of Madhura through cunningness, right? The churning of Madhura through violence, putting his father in jail. This churning of Madhura, that he got rid of all his father's ministers and he kept only those people who were, praising him as ministers, right? This churning of Madhura, the name changed from Madhura to Mathura. એટલે મધુરાનું વલોણું જે થયું એ મથુરા, પણ નેગેટિવ વલોણું, એટલે it is મંથનમાંથી મથુરાનું ઉત્પન્ન થયું, in which there was no morality. So Mathura is that space within us, within our psychological space, which is always wanting more in life and is willing to do deceitful things, willing to get more through cunningness, right? To cheat somebody. And that space within us is Mathura. And in that space there is trembling all the time, kampan all the time. And that is the inner monkey, the restlessness, which is chattering all the time. Now, Kans had two wives, Asti and Prapti. And they were both the daughters of Jarasandh. Jarasandh had attacked Mathura once, and Kans defeated Jarasandh. And Jarasandh gave both his daughters as wives to Kans, and there was a great bond and friendship between Jarasandh and Kansa. And so Asti is what I have in life, what I have in life. But I'm not satisfied with what I have in life. I want more. So the second wife is Prapti. And this is our swing in life, right? Today, I don't have a car, I got a car, Asti. But now I'm not satisfied with this car, I want this car, Asti to Prapti, right? So this inner movement of the mind, the inner movement where the consciousness is trapped, right? Between what we have and what we want tomorrow. These are the two wives of Kamsa. Asti, what we have; Prapti, what we want tomorrow. And the mind is always swinging between these two like a pendulum. And he was very cruel. Not only would he achieve what he wanted through what you call cunningness, but he could be very cruel about it, could be very violent about it. His Kansa's only friends were of the wrestling, what do you call, the wrestling group, the wrestlers, the Mala Samudai, what they called, right? And so you see his basic, what do you call, reason for living was to fulfill the, what do you call, the gratification of the five senses. He lived at a very basic physical level where he gratified the five senses. And this is the lowest level of ego which is present in all of us. Now, he was the son of Ugrasen, who was the king of the Yadavs. And it is said that Ugrasen's wife, Pavan Rekha, she once went to a hill station for a holiday. And there's a beautiful description, but we don't have time to go into all that description, right? And there was a demon prince who was, what do you call, going on the way, the Rakshas. And as he was passing in his chariot, he saw this Pavan Rekha, and she was so beautiful that he got infatuated by her. And Rakshasas have a quality, they can change their appearance, right? So they can't change their inner form. Inner form is of a Rakshas only, of a demon only, but they can change their outer form. And so he changed his outer form into a very handsome prince, right? And Pavan Rekha was so infatuated by him that they both met, and it is through his seed that Kans was born. Later she came and Ugrasen accepted Kans as his son, and she said that I was going somewhere and a monkey, what do you call, demon monkey raped me, which was wrong. But that is what she said over there. But Kans already knew that he was the son of a demon, not the son of Ugrasen, because there is always this factor in Hindu mythology called Narad. And Narad came and told Kans that you are not Ugrasen's son, you are the son of a demon, and your mother was in this way, what do you call, infatuated with a Rakshas. And Kans took this very proudly. He took this very proudly, and he always boasted. It was a part of his negative self-love. He always boasted that I am not Ugrasen's son, I am the son of a great Rakshas, and he boasted about this. Now, Krishna's father was Vasudev or Vasudev, whichever way we want to say it. And it is said that when he was born, the Devas played the dundubhi, the trumpets, and that is why he was named as, Vasudev, where consciousness resides. Dev means consciousness, the place where consciousness vas, where it stays, consciousness. And so he was named as Vasudev. He was very fair and handsome, and in those days, in the whole Yadav clan, he was Mr. Yadav, right? Everybody, he was the most handsome, and everybody wanted their daughters to marry him, Vasudev. But in this whole Krishna Leela, he doesn't have a very big part to play. And the only part he plays in this whole drama of Krishna is the exchanging of the children, where he goes about the exchanging of the children. Another meaning we can say is that he has come from a, what do you call, higher womb, Dev Yoni. That is another thing of Vasudev, which has been born out of a higher womb, out of divinity, out of consciousness. We can say it in that way also. Vasudeva had 14 wives, 7 daughters of Devak, of which the most famous was Devki, and she was Kansa's favorite cousin, and so she was of the royal family of Mathura. 5 daughters of the king Bahalik, and the most famous was his most favored wife, the one he loved the most, and that was Rohini. And Rohini later had a son called Balram, right, who was Krishna's elder brother. He had also married 2 maid servants, dasis, and so in this way he had 14 wives. Now, because Narad had told Kamsa, now we have to understand this character Narad, right? And Nar means to lead one to the path of dharma, the one who leads to the path of dharma, right? And this could be very cruel, and it could also happen through a lot of suffering also, right? You don't go very easily to the path of dharma, right? It could be through great cruelty or through great suffering also. So because of that, in Kansa's subconscious, there was a kind of seed which was planted, that because Devki is so close to me, maybe one of her children, because Narada told him long ago, somebody from your family is going to kill you. And so maybe one of her children will kill me. So there was already this seed planted in his mind, even though he loved her the most as his favorite cousin, his sister, like. On the other hand, we will see that Rohini brought up her children, and Kans never tormented Rohini, and she was able to bring up her children very easily. Now, in the Yadavas, there are 2 Gotras, 2 divisions, Vrushni and the Andhaks. And Vasudeva was of the Vrushni kull, and what you call Kans was of the Andhak kull. Now, here this word Vrushni is very important, because Vrushni depicts in that kull, that group, in which there is a transformation of sex energy. Vrush meaning the Vrushab, the bull, and the bull represents sex energy. We also say Vrushan, the testes, right? So where there is a transformation of sex energy into something higher, that group, that kull was the Vrushni kull, and Krishna was born in the Vrushni kull. In the Harivansh, there is a beautiful story that Vishnu wanted to take avatar, and he wanted to come down on the earth. And so he asked Brahma for his advice. And Brahma told him there is a famous Gopalak called Vasudev. Now here we must understand that when Ugrasen was the king of Mathura, Vasudev was his main minister who looked after the affairs of the kingdom. But Kans put his father in jail and became the king. And he was very frightened of Vasudev. And so he made Vasudev in charge of the cattle. So he was looking after Kansa's cows and all that, right? So he was the minister for cattle, right? And so Brahma tells Vishnu that there is a Gopalak called Vasudev, and you take you take birth in his school at his place. And he says he looks after Kansa's cows, and the cows are roaming all over near the Govardhan mountain. We'll go into what Govardhan means later on. And he's very intelligent. He's a taxpayer, and you can take birth over there. So Vishnu decides to take birth at the house of Vasudeva. Now, everybody knows the famous story that Devki's wedding with Vasudev, and as he was doing the Vidai to Devki, the what you call heavenly voice came, what we call the Akashwani, that her eighth child will be the cause of your death, will kill you. And now, how do we understand this Akashwani? How do we see it in our lives? Right? Now, in yoga, the inner brain is called the Brahmarandhra. Brahmarandhra. And the Brahmarandhra is like a cavity with different what you call pathways to different centers or different areas. We just won't use the word Brahmarandhra, we'll just use because these are connected with areas in our brain, so we'll just take our own brain for that matter. And one of these pathways leads to something which is called the mind of God, or the universal divine mind, or the divine center. In Gurdjieff, this is called as the higher emotional center. And normally, this part of the brain lies in an area of suspension. Man has to make an effort to open that part of the brain. And the second point is the highest chakra called Bindu, which in our brain would be the silent area. And it is at that point that the divine fragment or the spirit or the Atma resides. So we have 2 points in the brain. One is where the mind of God is, and one where is the divine center, right? Now, both these areas, right, they try to communicate with our brain at our level. Now, when a thought is formed, and a thought is formed in 2 ways, I'm just trying to explain this to you, that before the thought becomes a word, before the thought becomes the word, it is formed over here as a kind of picture. It is formed as a kind of picture. We call that as a thought form. That thought form travels over the brain like this, and here we convert that thought form into a language. When we talk about thought, we are talking about language. We are not talking about the thought form. In deep meditation, we may be able to see the thought form, sense the thought form. Now, when the thought form is created over here and it travels over this pathway, it travels over the universal mind, the divine center, or what Gurdjieff calls the higher emotional center. And that center is always whispering to us, all 24 hours. So, as the thought passes over, but because we are so identified with the thought, we are so overpowered with the thought, that as it passes over this divine, we don't hear the whisper of the divine center, right? So that whisper of the divine center in certain situations of where we are in deep pain, maybe, and in deep pain the thoughts stop for some time and we hear the whispers of that divine center. Or when we are in a sudden state of happiness where the thoughts stop. We may be seeing a sunset, or we may be hearing a music, and there's a moment in that music where we go, aha, and all the thoughts stop. At that moment that we may hear the whispers of that center, and that is called as Akashwani. That is called as Akashwani. Now, there is another center which is the divine fragment itself, the divine center itself. So this is the mind of God, and this is the divine center. But that only speaks in a man's life 3 times. It only speaks in a man's life 3 times, and it tries to, what you call, tell man that what are you doing in life? You are achieving this, you're trying to achieve this, but look inside. There is something more higher to achieve inside, right? Make a journey inside. And but so that is the higher center, but that speaks only 3 times in one's life. So we can see in this case that either of these two centers, at that moment when he was very happy, his cousin was getting married, suddenly that fear which was surrounding him all the time, it suddenly dropped, and he could hear the voice of those centers, and he heard them say that you're going to die with her eighth son, who will be born after 8 years. Now, usually these centers, when they speak, when they tell us something, if we take it directly into the logical mind, if we take it directly into the, what do you call, thinking mind, then most likely we will get the opposite reason for why they spoke, right? So now there is one way to look at this, that supposing somebody would tell me that you have only 8 years to live, and why 8 years? We'll say 3 months to live or 6 months to live, and this is the time you're, then I will decide what to do with these 6 months, what to do with these 8 years in the proper way, right? And my aim would be to realize the inner divine, as rise in consciousness towards that inner divine as much as possible in those 6 months, right? That would be my aim, that would be my desire, right? And I would make right use of those 6 months, 8 years, whatever the period, right? I would plan it out, and I would, so many things would automatically drop from my life, right? If I was planning it out in this way, that supposing if it's 6 months, somebody calls me for a wedding, I'm not going to go for that wedding. I'd rather sit in meditation and observe what is happening within me. Can you understand what I'm trying to say, right? So, and one of the exercise which my guru used to make us do was that we had to sit and visualize that it is the last hour of our life and we are going to die after 1 hour, and what we would do in that 1 hour before dying, right? And definitely I would not go to socialize in a party, I would not go to for a movie. So many things drop from our life automatically, right? And this dropping of life in with the picture of death in front of you was what was in the old days called as sannyas. Not to wear orange clothes was not sannyas, right? The idea that tomorrow death is there, and if death is there, then how do I prepare for that death? Then so many ordinary things which we do in our life would drop automatically. And so, but Kans took this in the opposite way. He took it with a negative logic. He said, if somebody wants to kill me, I'll kill that only. So how can he kill me? So instead of, the inner voice always speaks for positivity. The inner voice always speaks for positivity, and that is what he heard, and he could have, what you call, transformed his life in those 8 years completely from a very base ego, from a very animalistic ego to something at a higher state of consciousness. But instead of that happening, the, what do you call, he took it negatively, and this is what happens with logic. This is what happens with the lower mind, that something which comes from the higher mind, we, what do you call, analyze it and dissect it, and then we come to a solution which is not the right solution to come to. And that is exactly what happened in Kans's case, right? So he did hear something from the higher, right? And at that moment, he made wrong use of it. He brought it into his logical mind that if I kill the eighth son, then who is going to kill me? It was a totally negative interpretation of what he had seen. And that was because he was a negatively crystallized person. He was crystallized in his cruelty. He was crystallized in his what you call harming other people. He was crystallized in his fear of other people. So the higher meets us for a higher purpose, but if we dissect it with our logical mind, then we always take it into a lower purpose. And we will later see that there are two examples in front of us. When we look at the Mahabharata, Karna was born in the higher but grew up in the lower, always complaining about the lower, right? Krishna was born in the royal family, born in the higher, but he was brought up in the cowherd family, also brought up in the lower, right? But he made the best use of the lower. He transformed it into a paradise, the lower. So here we have two examples, one in the Mahabharata. One is of Krishna and one is of Karna. Both were born in the higher but brought up in the lower, right? And both you can see the difference there. So Kamsa, instead of what you call giving the Bharat the Bidai, he imprisoned Devki and Vasudev immediately. And from here, Devki's suffering starts, right? Now, suffering is something very, very important. And especially on the spiritual path, there are what you call many kinds of suffering. The lowest is involuntary suffering, where suffering comes in my life and I complain about it all the time. I say if I had not done this, then I would not suffer. So there's always if only in my life, right? Or I say that he is the fault or she is the fault and I would not have suffered if she had not done this to me. I find fault with someone. So this is where I'm struggling with suffering all the time. It is an involuntary form of suffering. Then we transform normal involuntary suffering into voluntary suffering. That is, suffering comes in our lives, but we relax our muscles, we relax ourselves, and that involuntary suffering becomes voluntary suffering. There's no complaining about it, there's no finding fault with others, right? And we transform that involuntary suffering into voluntary suffering. Then there is intentional suffering. Once we decide to walk on the spiritual path, then a long period of intentional suffering, because we want to wake up in the morning, do our exercises. So we have to sacrifice something in the evening. We have to sacrifice maybe watching a movie at night for doing our exercises in the morning, right? So when we walk in the spiritual path, we transform involuntary suffering into voluntary suffering. And we create a new form of suffering called intentional suffering. And we are suffering for a purpose, for a higher purpose, right? We are letting go of so many things in our life where we would like to go, right? But we don't do that for a higher purpose, intentional suffering. And then there's the highest form of suffering, conscious suffering. Now, conscious suffering is, it has a long, very wide spectrum of what comes in conscious suffering. But we will take from the beginning, the first form of conscious suffering is the suffering to remain in the present moment. That is the beginning of conscious suffering, the suffering to remain in the present moment. The whole spiritual journey starts from the present moment, right? So the suffering we go through to remain in the present moment is conscious suffering. So here Kamsa has taken Devki and Vasudev into jail, he's imprisoned them, and a period of suffering starts. Now, this period of suffering lasts for 8 years, right? And we are going to go into this, right? And so initially what happens is that he pulls Devki from the chariot, holding her hair, and lifts his sword to kill her immediately. So Vasudeva intervenes and says that, why do you worry? You let us go. Huh? If you want, you can keep us under house arrest. But when the eighth child is born, I will give you the eighth child and you can kill the eighth child. Why do you want to, I promise I'll give you. And he agreed also, Kamsa, and he let them go free. Now, the next day, Kamsa was swinging in his garden, and as we know, Narad came to meet him. And Narad says that, why did you let both of them go free? So he says, they have promised to give me the eighth child, and so I've let them go free. So he says, how did you count the eighth child? So if you count from the last, the first is the eighth. If you count from the second, the seventh is the eighth. Right? So how have you counted 8? So this and he runs from there and he, captures the Devki and puts her into prison. And so he is now going to kill all the 7, whilst first Vasudeva had told him that I will give you the 8th child, and now Narad changed all this. Now, we have to wonder why Narad did this, right? And of course, we know Narad, that Nar to lead, that which leads towards dharma. The only answer we can get over here is that Devki had to go through a process of 8 years of voluntary suffering, intentional suffering, to make her womb ready to give birth to Krishna, right? Now, what is suffering? In spiritual terms, what is suffering? We must try to understand what is suffering. Supposing I rise to a higher state of consciousness, I get a glimpse of a higher state of consciousness. And initially, these higher states come in glimpses only. Thank you. Right. So, how do I make that higher state permanent? How do I make it, not just a glimpse, it remains for a longer period of time? And for that, I have to hold it in suffering. I have to hold it in suffering. It's like this, that I buy a plot of land and I give the other person the money for the plot of land. Well, the land is not mine till in the government records his name has gone and my name has come in his place. Are you aware? You get this? Similarly, I get a glimpse of the higher state of consciousness, but that state of consciousness is not mine till it passes through a period of suffering, right? I have to hold it in a period of suffering. Now, when we suffer, usually it's very difficult to hold a state of consciousness, to hold a meditative state, right? Usually, if I'm suffering, I'm always complaining. Oh, my body is aching, and what will I do, and what will happen, and etc., etc. And then there's worry of the future. And so, what is becoming permanent in me? What is becoming permanent in me? Can you understand? Complaining is becoming permanent in me. Worrying is becoming permanent in me. because what I do in suffering becomes permanent, right? Now I'm suffering, but I'm trying to hold this higher state of consciousness. And in that period of suffering, if I hold that higher state of consciousness, then I can enter that state anytime I want. Now I can move to a much higher state also. That land which I had bought has been transferred to my name. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? So maybe the only answer we can get over here is that he wanted Devki to go through a period of 8 years of suffering, and in that 8 years of suffering, the womb, it slowly gets cooked through tapa, through the heat of tapa, through the heat of austerity. It gets cooked, and it is then ready to give birth to such a high, what do you call, Atma or a spirit as Krishna. That is the only answer we can get over here. The second thing is that what we see is that this period of 8 years is very, very important. This period of 8 years. Why 8 years? What is so mystical in the figure 8? The eighth child, right? And later on, maybe someday we will study Gurdjieff and we'll say 8 is related to the octave. The word octave means 8, right? We say Ashtada Prakruti. Ashtada Prakruti means the 5 elements, and Man, Buddhi, Ahankar. These are the Ashtada Prakruti. We say there are 8 divine qualities, the 8 Vasus, what we call the 8 divine qualities, the 8 Vasus, right? Now, if you look at the figure 8, you will see it is composed of two circles, and it represents harmony in every phase of existence. The balance between material life and spiritual life, the balance between Prakriti and Purusha. You can see it is not just a steady 8, it is a moving kind of figure where you can see as if the universe every moment is looking for equilibrium, right? Nature is looking for equilibrium. Today, in the last 200, 300 years, man has raped nature completely. So many animals have become extinct. So, I mean, the atmosphere has become completely toxic, right? Where man is going with his raping of nature, making use of nature. So instead of moving in a harmonious way with nature, man has sort of tried to control nature and to make use of nature. And so if we look at the figure 8, we know that now nature is going to strive for some kind of equilibrium. She wants to come back to the middle point, right? So how she's going to do it, we don't know. It may be through earthquakes, it may be through change in weather, we don't know. But it's going to, somewhere nature is going to bring back that equilibrium. So the figure 8 is this every moment nature's trying to bring balance back into existence. So it is associated with the concept of balance and harmony in the cosmos. Now, another very, very interesting part of the figure 8 is when you put it on its side, it becomes the sign of infinity. So if you put 8 on the side, it becomes the sign of infinity. Now, we'll try to just understand what infinity means. In spiritual terms, what infinity means. There is one line of time from birth to death. This is the line of expressed form. You want to draw it or you?
We have something there.
Oh, okay.
We also draw it.
Yeah. So we have a line of time moving from birth to death, and this is the line of expressed form. And expressed form means something which can be seen by the five senses, which is tangible to the five senses. Now, this line of time from birth to death is made up of small dots called the present moment. Each of this line is made up of small dots called present moment. Each of these present moments is intersected by a higher kind of time which we call as eternity. It's called as eternity. So this is our temporal time, movement from the past to the present moment to the future. How is that line drawn? It is by connecting the dots of the present moment. That is how we draw that line of time. Now, each of these present moments is intersected by a higher time, and we can only move into that time if we rise in consciousness. But because each of these higher lines of time, they start from the present moment, right? As long as we are living before and after the present moment, either in the past or in the future, we cannot enter that higher line of time, right? So to enter that higher line of time and then climb the ladder of consciousness, first we have to come into the present moment. All meditative activities is to come into the present moment. None of the meditations teach you how to climb in consciousness. Am I coming across with this? Now, in this line of time, there is expressed form. In that line of time, there is subtle form. Now, what is the difference between expressed form and subtle form? Supposing we want to build this house, right? So this is an expressed form, vyakta thing usually, right? But before we built this house, in the architect's mind, it was there as a subtle form. There was a form in the mind of the architect, but it was in a subtle form. Subtle form is made out of the magnetism of planets, but that is not our subject today, so we won't go into it, right? So there is a subtle form in the mind of the architects. When that subtle form is filled with bricks and cement and whatever, it becomes into an express form. We are made of two parts, body and soul. Body and soul, and also one more part called spirit or the Atma. The body is an express form, the house is built. But the soul which was looking for a mother and father has a form, but it is a subtle form. Can you get what I'm trying to say? It had a form made out of planetary matter, which Gurdjieff calls an essence, right? But it was a subtle form. So the soul is lying in which dimension of time? In the vertical dimension of time. Our body is in which dimension of time? The horizontal dimension, where forms are expressed. Now, so when the soul is looking for a mother and father, it gets what you call blood and skin and bones, and from a what you call subtle form, it becomes a gross form or a expressed form. I don't know if I'm coming across. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Right? So this line of time is of expressed form or gross form. This line of time is subtle form. And that it is the rising of consciousness is in subtle form, it is not in gross form. Anything I do in gross form cannot, what do you call, affect consciousness. Can you understand? Right? In this line of time, if I do anything, it cannot help me to rise in consciousness. So I will say I'm living in a bustling city and I will go to the, what do you call, seaside resort, and I'll live there and I'll meditate on the ocean. It makes no difference because I'm changing things in which time? This time. Can you understand? But this is the line of a subtle form, the line of understanding. If I understand wherever I am, I can rise in consciousness, right? Then I'm moving in this time, I'm moving in vertical time. So man lives in two times. Man lives in two times. The physical dimension or the temporal dimension of time, from past to present to future, and the subtle dimension of time in which his soul lives, right? See, when I eat physical food, right, I am feeding which form? The gross form. But when I extract rasa, enjoyment from food, I am feeding which form? The soul. The soul is nourished through enjoyment. The soul is fed through enjoyment. That is why the Vaishnavas say you extract rasa, right? The soul is nourished through enjoyment. And when it is a conscious form of enjoyment, the soul rises. But I get enjoyment by taking, what do you call, revenge upon her. Can you understand? Right? Now, that enjoyment is going to go to the soul, but it is going to hold the soul at a very low level of consciousness. So, all negative emotions are holding the soul at a very low level of consciousness. Am I coming across in this? Right? Because they give us negative enjoyment. They give us negative enjoyment. Right? Supposing I have a girlfriend. Now, that girlfriend, I have lived 2-3 years, we've had a good life together, so much of enjoyment together, but then I see her talking and laughing with somebody else, right? So now jealousy comes in, suspicion comes in, and then I say, she must have been doing this yesterday. Now, yesterday I had such a good time with her. Yesterday I must, now that yesterday I have spoiled through the, what do you call, the attitude of suspicion. Can you get what I'm trying to say? So, when I'm in and once I start suspecting her of doing this, doing that, 5 years ago she was doing this, she must have been doing it at that time also. Can you understand what I'm getting a negative rust out of it. Can you, so whom is that negativity going to? The soul. And that is why at the lowest level the soul is the dominating ego. It is Kamsa. It is full of all this negativity, and it is that which we have to rise from, right? And so the initial path is the path of purification, right? To allow the soul to rise from there. So we live in two dimensions of time, but there is a third thing joined to us, and that is the spirit. And the spirit or the Atma is formless. So there is physical form of the body-brain system, there is subtle form of the essence or the soul, right? And there is the formlessness of the Atma or the spirit. So as we rise in consciousness in the vertical line of time, as we move into higher and higher states of consciousness, at one point the soul merges from form into the formless, and that boundary of formlessness, that boundary is called as infinity. On this side is form, on that side is formless. I don't know if I'm able to explain this. Huh? That, right? So, આ બાજુ રૂપ છે, આ બાજુ અરૂપ છે, nothing. આ બાજુ રેખાઓ છે, આ બાજુ no રેખા, no lines. So, this infinity, the figure 8, it is that boundary of the universe beyond which all forms don't exist. Right? The form itself moves into the formless. Right? This state in Hindu terminology is called as Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness. When do we experience that state? But we are not conscious in that state. We still experience that state. But we are not conscious in that state.
Deep sleep?
Huh?
Deep sleep?
Deep sleep is definitely one of them. And where else? Where else? When man goes into the sex act, right? And he experiences orgasm, he or she experiences orgasm in sex. In orgasm, man loses consciousness. He loses, so he doesn't know what happens in that transit state of orgasm. He doesn't know what happens but in that state, he's sitting on this boundary of infinity. There's so much joy in sex because you dip into the formless and come back into the form. This state in yoga is known as Prakriti Lay, where Prakriti goes back into her, that moment where the Big Bang started, where creation started. And if we can bring consciousness to that point in the sex act, then you will be sitting on that wall where everything started before the Big Bang, right? So that is where formless came into form, huh? And it is that point, right? Infinity. Figure 8, and that is why the figure 8 is so mystical, Krishna being the 8th sun. 8 is the cyclical nature of life, and we move through life and return. It is like the law of eternal return. But 8 tells us that we don't always return to the same point. Even though we come back to the same point, it is not the same point. We have risen a little, and that is why it gives us an effect of the what you call spiral movement. That we come back to the same point, but it is not the same point. There is some change has happened, and we have risen up. So the number 8, it represents the soul moving to a higher state of consciousness. It tells us that in this moment, whatever we do, whatever seed we sow in this moment, it goes round and returns to us. It can't go anywhere else. And it tells us that it is not a circular movement, there is a spiral movement, and if you learn to climb the ladder, then you can rise in consciousness very fast. You don't have to go round and round. You climb up like this, and there is a way to climb up like this, through our self-awareness and spiritual growth. Now, my teacher, Mr. Tavaria, used to make us rotate energy in the figure of 8 between Mooladhara and Swadhisthana. I'm not going to make you do that today. But we are going to just visualize the figure 8 for 5 minutes, right? Few minutes, not even 5 minutes. And try to close your eyes, let everyone close their eyes. And try to look at the figure 8 as infinity within you. And try to move your energy in that figure eight as if your attention is going around in two circles. Be hold your presence totally in the present moment. Hold your presence totally in the present moment. And just feel as if you're moving around in the figure eight, as if you're flowing in the figure eight. As you move along the curves, feel the curves as if it is such beautiful, smooth movement of the curves, the elegant movement of the curves. Feel the harmony the movement between two circles brings. The circle of life and the circle of spirituality, the circle of materialism and the circle of consciousness. And how you're moving through both the circles and balancing both the circles. You're learning to balance both the circles in our life. Feel the energy moving through the figure eight, as if there's a surge of energy moving through the figure eight. And you're connecting to the figure eight, and the figure eight, you're at that point where the forms move into the formlessness, where everything that is created moves into inky darkness and nothingness. And the pathway is through the figure eight. Feel that movement. And if you're moving in your attention in this figure eight every day, feel that whatever you're doing in life, now suddenly that one point in life will bring so many other possibilities, so many other doorways will open because of this movement of energy. Okay, we'll slowly stop and try to come back to the and open our eyes slowly. Small meditation, but when you go to your office or something, you can, before you start your work, it's a very, very powerful meditation. Like I say, there's so much in the figure eight, and it is that boundary between the form and formlessness, right? Now, there is one word in Sanskrit called kirti, and kirti means fame, and there is fame of the ego and there's fame of the soul. So we see here that as the 8th year comes and Devaki is pregnant again with the 8th child, there is her whole body and everything is glowing with a special kind of glow, right? And this is fame of the ego, right? So in the Gita we have one word where Krishna tells Arjuna, Kirtikar Arjuna, and most people have say by become famous. He's not telling him to become famous. He's saying increase the aura of your soul, bring the power of your soul, increase the power of your soul, not the power of your ego, right? So what do you call, in the 8th month she was glowing with a very, what do you call, powerful divine light. She was glowing, and this is the, what do you call, fame of the soul, kirti of the soul. And when even a person like Kans, what do you call, when he saw that glow on her, for some time he came back, I don't want to kill this child. You know, it came back to him. 6 children were killed by Kans. The 7th was, what do you call, apparently a miscarriage, but it was an exchange between Rohini and what do you call, Yashoda, and that exchange child was called Balram. What do you call, Devki and Rohini, and their exchange child was called Balram. And this, what do you call, exchange is also called as sankar to exchange, right? So, I mean, the womb was exchanged. Now, Krishna was born a month early. Again, we see the figure 8 over here. And what do you call, he was a premature child actually. And because they were waiting for the womb to ripen, in the 8th month, because he was premature, there was a kind of looseness. Everybody were not very, what do you call, attentive that the child is going to come. They still felt some time was there. So the guards were not attentive, and even Kans was still feeling there's still time for the child to be born. But the child was born 1 month early, a premature child, and there was great reason to celebrate. Now, from here, from this point of Krishna's birth, it is where all the poets come in, all the storytellers come in, and now for the next few years, this life of Krishna has been the, what do you call, subject of thousands of bhajans, thousands of storytellers, thousands of poets. It's been extolled in different ways and all, because this is the most rich period of his life in this. So it starts with the child being born, and the beauty is that when the child was born, the chains in which Devki was uh, uh, chained in the jail, they broke open automatically. The doors of the jail opened automatically. The guards were asleep because they were not aware, right? And it is as if when consciousness, when we rise to a higher state of consciousness within ourselves, right, the jail of sansar suddenly breaks from us, right? The chain of sanskar, chain of memory, the chain of desire, these suddenly break from us, and we are at a higher state of consciousness. And this possibility that in everybody's life, as they rise to a higher state of consciousness, the chains of sansar break within us. Similarly, Krishna was born in the jail, but he was not in the jail because all the doors opened automatically at that time. So it was very easy for, what do you call, Vasudeva, his father, to take him in a wicker basket, right? In a bamboo basket, in a wicker basket. He takes him across the Yamuna. And this is where all the storytelling starts over here. And if he just took him across the Yamuna just like that, then all the bhaks and all would feel it's a very dry thing. So that is why this has been extolled like anything. The story of the crossing of the Yamuna. Now, it is full of, what do you call, shringar, full of symbology, very, very deep. And I mean, every time you read it and you ponder upon it, new meanings come, new scenery comes within you, new feelings come within you. Now, try to see this. Bhishma was also the 8th son. Krishna was also the 8th son. On the birth of Krishna, the doors of the fort, whole of Mathura fort, opened automatically. Freedom. Krishna lived in the jail of his, what do you call, pratigya, his whole life. Both were the 8th children. Both were the 8th children. All the guards were asleep. The people of Mathura were totally asleep. Now, it's so beautiful over here that one day ago, just maybe 12 hours before or few hours before, there were dust storms in Mathura. And when there are dust storms, you can't sleep, right? The, what do you call, water of the Yamuna river was up to the ankles only. And suddenly rain started falling. That is before he was born, and the dust storms all subsided in the rain. The weather cooled down, people went to sleep in that weather. The water of the Yamuna, which was very shallow, right, it rose, started rising into a flood, right, and it was as if the, what do you call, birth was being celebrated by existence, by the environment around. The birth was being celebrated. So it was midnight when he was born, very dark, and the rain was falling. There was lightning all around, thunder. A cool breeze blew through Mathura. All the dust had settled down, and people were sleeping in a deep happiness, as if something great was going to happen. The river started dancing to the tune of the environment, the waves started rising. And the Bhagavad gives a beautiful scene of what is happening over here, as if it's a world full of magic, a world full of magic, what they say. Vasudev takes the newly born in the basket, and the waves of the Yamuna start going up as he's crossing the Yamuna, and as if they are trying to touch the feet of the young Krishna, right? So the five elements wanted to touch his feet, have darshan of the young child. They say Lord Adishesh, the five-hooded serpent, Sheshnag, he came and he protected the child from the rain. Now, with his hood totally expanded. Now, many people say here that the river made way for Vasudev to cross the river. Now, the snake, very, very important, right? Because snake depicts the rising of the Kundalini energy, the five centers in the body, the thinking center, the emotional center, the instinctive center, the moving center, and the sex center, right? The five centers, the five pranas, the five sense organs. And the snake is also, representative of time. It is saying that here is a child who is born, who is free of time and living in the timelessness of the present moment, because each present moment is eternal, and if you're living in the present moment, next present moment is again the present moment, and next present moment is again the present moment. There's no past or future. You're living in that eternal present moment, and that snake is the symbol of that living in the eternal present moment. So it is the fulfillment of Kundalini. Snake is a symbol of desire, the one who is risen above desires, right? Snake as a symbol of calm because it has desire as sex energy, the transformation of sex energy. And Sheshnag or Adishesh is the king of the serpents, right? He is that first serpent who came into being, the first snake who came into being. And he holds all the planets in his hood. So all man's actions, all man's experiences are there covering this young child, and he's going across. And he is also called Anantanag, the symbol of eternity, symbol of eternity. Sesh means he who remains, he who remains. So in this moment, whenever I do any action, that which remains becomes the seed of repetition. That which remains is the seed of karma. Can you see? And so in time we keep on sowing seeds, and those seeds come to meet us in different forms. And here he's saying that this, what you call, the very, what you call seed of karma or the law of karma is guarding him. He is free from the action of cause and effect. He's risen above cause and effect. Now, something deeper over here. In the Hindu mythology, they talk about lay and pralay. That is, at one point of time, the universe goes back into its original source. That is called pralay, right? But something remains at that time, and that is this sesh. It comes from the word sis, to remain, remainder, right? And it is on that seed of the remainder that again the world is rebuilt, again lay, and this cycle of lay and pralay, again the figure 8 continues all the time. And so in what do you call, in the Gita we have what is called as karma yoga. Karma yoga is that you sow the seed and you reap the fruit. But in Patanjali we don't have karma yoga. In the Yoga Sutra we don't have karma yoga. We have kriya yoga. So when you are performing your actions free of karma, you are living in kriya yoga. Patanjali says tapasvadhyaya ishwar pranidhanatva kriya yoga. Right? So he says when you're living your actions free of sowing any seed of karma, at that level of consciousness where you're not allowing yourself to sow a single seed, you're living not in karma yoga, you are now living in kriya yoga. You're just living life for the joy of living life. You're living life for the drama of life, to play your part in the drama of life. And so as you rise into a higher state of consciousness, right, you, every moment you don't leave something remaining. There is no sesh. There is no sesh. And if there is no sesh, then there is no repetition. If there is no repetition, you're free of the law of karma. But even when the world ends, there has to be a sesh. Only from that sesh can the world come back again. And that is the, what you call, the cycle of lay and prelay. Now, he's sucking the thumb of his left foot. Okay? And he's enjoying that sucking like anything. I mean, as if it is giving him the greatest joy. And here we have a lesson to learn, that for us, happiness is always dependent upon something, right? So if I get a new car, I'll be happy, right? Or maybe I'll say, if I rise in a meditative state, I'll be happy, right? If this happens, I'll be happy. So happiness is always dependent upon something happening in our life. There's always an outside source of happiness. And as long as happiness is dependent upon something, it is not happiness, it is slavery actually. It is always dependent upon something happening. So he's saying the source of happiness is not outside. You suck your thumb, right? The source of happiness is within you. And he's saying this cycle of lay and pralay, this cycle of creation, I'm sucking my thumb, right? And the world may go sesh and come back again and lay and pralay. Happiness comes from within. There is an inner source of happiness, and we have to find that inner source of happiness and open that inner source of happiness. And it is this picture which the Vaishnavas use, because he is taking ras from his sucking his own thumb. There's so much of joy in sucking his own thumb. And it is this picture which the Vaishnavas use, as that ras can be taken from any activity in life. From any activity in life, you can give enjoyment to the soul. The soul is nourished through enjoyment. Again, we saw the figure 8. So again, he's sucking his thumb over here of the left foot. And again, it is the cycle of life. The sucking of the thumb is also saying that if you devote your consciousness to my feet, if you devote your conscious, then I will impart my state of consciousness to you. If you surrender to me, I will impart my state of consciousness to you. The thumb symbolizes determination. My guru used to say, your face is your fortune, your feet are your destiny. So the thumb of the foot, it symbolizes the, what do you call, the destiny which is going to come to meet you, and how, whether you will be able to steadfastly go through that destiny or not go through that destiny. It is the, what do you call, symbol of intuition, and it is the symbol of tapping into the higher consciousness. If we can understand the thumb of the foot, then it is the rudder which takes our ship through the sea of life. And here again he's sucking his own thumb. He's saying, I have total control over my life. But later on we will see even with his total control over his life, he had to go through all the events which were fixed in his life. He could not decide the events of his life. The events of his destiny were totally pre-programmed from the beginning. The Yamuna, the word yam means to pause, yam means to restrain. In the Hindu terminology, Yam is the god, known as the god of death, but that is not exactly the, what do you call, right? But everything has to end in time. And that law which allows everything to end in time is Yam. It transforms something into something else, right? So winter may say, I want to go on forever, but summer comes and stops winter. Right? The sea may come and say, I want to take over all the land, but the sands stop the sea. This stopping, this pausing of this, the sea, that is Yam. And Yamuna is the sister of Yam. She's called as Yami, the sister of Yam. Right? And so the crossing of the Yamuna is to pausing the lower, stopping the lower and rising into the higher. And on the opposite side of the Yamuna is what is called as Nandagaon, the city of joy. The city of joy, the city of Anand, right? So he's going from the jail across the Yamuna into the city of joy. But Yamuna is again a symbol of love. To enter that city of joy, you have to pass through the river of love, the river of bhakti. So he goes there, and there the chief is, of course, his name is Nanda only, and he's ready and waiting. He was Vasudev's friend, and they exchange the, what do you call, babies over there. And the whole of Nandagaon is also sleeping at this time. Yashoda, that is Nand's wife, she does not know that she had just given birth to a girl, and she does not know that what do you call, girl has been exchanged for Krishna. And there was an exchange of children over there. And then Vasudev takes the girl back and puts it with Devaki in the jail over there. By then the palace wakes up, all the guards run to Kamsa that the child has been born, and Kamsa comes, and Devaki begs him not to kill the child, but Kamsa is ready, and he tries to dash the child against the stone, but she slips from his hand and she flies into the sky, and in her hands are the 8, what do you call, symbols of Devi. That is the Trishul, that I control the 3 forces, the bow, I control my aim reaching to the target, arrows, I control all the instrumental causes in life, the sword, I can cut off the negativity from anywhere. The conch is actually shankha. Shank means to calm the destructive, shamam karu, to calm the destructive, to increase the vibration to a higher pitch, right? And she has the Sudarshan, that is right observation, and she has the Gada, right speech, Gadya Padya, what we call right speech. So here he suddenly sees all these 8 symbols in this what do you call female form as Devi, and she says, the child which is going to kill you has already been born, right? And do not kill innocent children because of this. She tells him and she vanishes. So many, here we are not really sure when Kans knew that the 8th child was living, but we can take one source over here that as she went, she said that the child is already born and he gets to know that the 8th child of Devaki is living. We'll stop over here. I think it's 6 o'clock. Is it 6 o'clock? Right? Okay, we'll continue this tomorrow. If there are any suggestions, let me know. If you're finding it a little getting bored or anything, just let me know. We can change it in whatever way you want to. Somehow I'm going a little slow, but I'll try to go a little faster tomorrow. Okay, right. Any questions anyone has? Anyone else? Yeah.
Maybe it's an abstract question, but I still have it. So you mentioned about the 2 lines of time, the
Right.
horizontal and the vertical.
Vertical.
So horizontal is the what our body goes through from birth to the death.
Yeah.
And every single moment, you have the potential to go into the infinite if you live your moment to the fullest.
Into the vertical time.
In the vertical.
Vertical time. That is eternal time.
Right.
Beyond that is infinite. Where eternal time ends is infinity, formless.
Right.
Formless, right. So from gross form you move into subtle form. Subtle form.
So, but that just gives you like one cross,
Right.
But every moment to moment is a potential to dip into the infinite. So it's
See,
like more you have one.
We take it in a simple way. Take it in a simple way. You say, I want this. So I can throw it to you, or I can say, please take this. So if I throw it to you in vertical time, I'm at a lower this way. It is the same present moment. And if I say, please take that, I've risen a higher little. And I can rise in that vertical time to a very high state of consciousness. Right. So, yeah, go ahead.
So my point is when you transition into the next moment,
Yeah.
so you start again from zero and you have the potential to go either higher or lower or stay there.
No, if you can hold your consciousness from moment to moment, then you're in the same point.
Okay. That answers my
See, you eat a chocolate and you stretch the taste of that chocolate little more. So you have stretched in a couple of moments. No?
Right.
You're still at the taste of the chocolate. Can you get it? You may be even more enjoying it much more, deeper. So you move deeper into vertical time. Right? Right. Shall we stop? Yeah? Okay, we meet tomorrow morning for the exercises and again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll continue from there.